Alright, hi everybody, this is Kurt Hollowell with Dog Eat Dog Games, and I'm here to talk about Microsoft Dream Build Play. They have a really cool competition going on this year, giving over $200,000 in prizes, so if you're making a game for Unity, go check it out. I'll be competing in the mixed reality section and hopefully the PC section as well. And basically, they want more UWP games, so they're doing a cool competition to get more games out there in the store. And I'm also doing a diary contest, so that's what this video and subsequent videos in this playlist are all going to be about. So it's going to be a diary about my work with Windows mixed reality headsets, and I want to make these videos sort of tutorials as well for anyone else working with these mixed reality headsets, so we can all learn together. So the headset I'm using is this Acer mixed reality headset. So far it's been really awesome, easy to use. Basically you just plug it in and it sets itself up in a minute or two, and besides that it's pretty much ready to go. Here's a little overview of what I'm going to be talking today. So I'm just going to start with an introduction. Talked about Dream Build Play, so I'm just going to give a quick introduction about myself, and then we'll get into some cool dev work, and then I've got a few Unity tips and tricks for you at the end. So quick about myself, my company. This is Dog Eat Dog Games. We make video games, and we also make tools for the Unity Asset Store. So we have an audio visualizer plugin that does beat detection and audio visuals. We have some visual effects plugins, procedural spaceship, so on and so forth. But anyways, that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and get into the development. And if you're getting started with Unity and mixed reality, then the first thing to get is Holo Toolkit. All you have to do is Google Unity Holo Toolkit, and you'll find this GitHub page. And this has everything you need to get started with mixed reality or some of the other like HoloLens or the mixed reality headsets. No matter what headset you have. Even if you're using a Vive or something like this, it's probably a good resource because they have a lot of really good versatile scripts that can be used across the board. So, and what you want to do is clone this into its own repo. So, for example, if I go into where I keep all my games, I have a separate package just for this mixed reality toolkit. So, and the reason you do that is because you want one empty directory that is linked to this Git repository. That way you can always get the latest into this directory, and then when you want to go to import this into your own projects, what you do is you open up this project in Unity, you right click the top folder and export a Unity package, and then import that into your existing project. And that's the best way to keep it separate, and that way you just have one repo with the Holo Toolkit in it. You can always get the latest and add your own code in there, and then move that into any other project that you might want. So let's go ahead and dig into it. This is my project for my game called Vivo right now. I think we're going to change the name to Beat Planet Madness later, but for right now it's called Vivo, and I'll just give you a quick view of what the game looks like already. So it's a spherical shooter, space shooter wrapped around a planet, and all the bullets orbit. And the unique thing about this game is that a lot of things are tied into the music. So you have abilities you have to use in sync with the music, like your charge shot you have to release in sync with the audio, and you have these different abilities. You can right click and pop open this ability wheel, and it's kind of like Rock Band. As this thing goes around, you have to release inside one of the circles on beat, and depending on where you release it, it does a different ability. So that's basically the game in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and get into mixed reality. And the first thing I wanted to do for my game is just talk about input. So how can I use these controllers and get them working with my game? So let's close this out. Once you import Holo Toolkit into your project, you'll notice these 3 folders. The one I started with was under examples and input scenes. They have a ton of different examples for any kinds of input you want, but I really wanted to get the controllers working, so I started with this motion controller test scene. So if you just double click that and open it up, basically you just have a bunch of debug information. I'll go ahead and hit play. So I'm going to put my headset on, but you guys will be able to see on the screen what I see in the game. So yeah, if you run this project, pretty simple. You have your controllers in front of you. You can see the models update nicely as you move your joysticks around or press the buttons. So that's pretty nice. They even have the touchpad and where you're touching on the touchpad. And then up here, you get to see all the status messages for, are we pressing the trigger, the thumbsticks, where are we pressing on the touchpad, all that information. We also have a nice debug menu that I think grabs all debug messages. So that's handy and helpful. So you can play around with the scene if you want. So what I'm going to do is basically take this scene, or what I've done is take this scene and strip out everything we don't need and get these inputs to work with my game. Let's exit this out, put the controllers down. So what I've done is just copied this scene and put it in my own scenes directory. And here we go, mixed reality input. So if you dig down under Debug Event Log and Basic Status, you'll see that's where that script is that is grabbing all the controller info and updating all those debug logs. So if we let's just double click that script and open it up so we can check it out. All right, so here we go. Here is the script that we just opened, and you can see at the top here there is a controller state. So this is a nice wrapper class for just the state of all the buttons on the controller. So that's awesome. We have a handedness, that's if it's left hand, right hand, or there's also an unknown in there, and then everything else is just everything we need to know about the rotation of the controller, where the pointer is, are we grabbing it, are we moving the joystick, so on and so forth. They have a dictionary of controllers. The reason they do that is because these controllers can get lost or found. So maybe your controller runs out of batteries or it goes out of view, comes back into view. They're keeping this dictionary with the current controllers that have been found. Then they have a ton of text meshes. That's just to display the info. Mainly there's just a few methods in here that are important. The big one is inside this awake method. We subscribe to a bunch of events from Interaction Manager. So this Interaction Manager is really what handles when sources are detected or lost or updated. And we're just going to subscribe to those events and call our own methods inside of those. So let's look at these three methods real quick. We have a detected, a lost, and an updated. So you can see inside the detected and the lost methods, it's basically just managing the controller inside of our dictionary. So here's our dictionary called controller. So when a new controller is detected, we basically just add it to our dictionary, or if a controller is lost, we remove it from our dictionary. Then inside the controller updated method here, we can see this is where we actually grab a controller out of our dictionary and update the state. So that's really all the magic that's happening in this script. The rest of it here is just related to printing out all the info. So what I've done is kind of created my own scripts to do this. I felt it was a good way to figure out how to do all this input on my own and make some nice wrapper functions to do things I want to do. So the first thing I did was take out this private controller state class. So I've made my own public controller state, and with all the same things, but I've also added a bunch of helper methods where we can call from an update loop, is any button down, is the grasp down, is the grasp up, and these are similar to button down or key down and button up, key up events, because these booleans here in the main class are just the current state. So if we called that from inside an update loop, every frame we'd get true or false here. Whereas if we call grasp down, for example, that only gets called once when the state is changed. So, I'm pretty sure inside the Holo Toolkit they have something along these lines. I know there's an input manager script, which you should probably go ahead and take a look at. I'll just look for it here. There it is. So you can see they have an input manager which has a ton of events that you could potentially subscribe to. I wanted to just kind of write my own so I knew exactly how they worked and how to use them. So that's what I've done here. And I will link this class into the description below so you guys can all just get it for yourself. But basically, I have this controller state class, and I also have a controller manager class. Let's look for that. Mixed reality controller manager. So what I did is took their class, this debug controller info. That's the one we were looking at initially. I pulled out this controller state class, and then I wrote my own little manager class to handle controllers being added, removed, and updated. So you can see here, here's my class, and instead of a dictionary of controller states, I just have two controller states, a left and a right. Now, right now for my game, I'm only ever going to have the left and the right controller. It doesn't handle multiplayer, so on and so forth. So I just wanted something a little simpler with quick access to the public controller state. So if you look here, I think mine's under Input Manager. So now, because these are public, we can see all the public status messages. Inside a dictionary, you can't see values inside a dictionary inside the inspector, so I just wanted to make public left and right so that as we play, we can see all these status messages get updated. So I'll just show it in action really quick and then go to talk about it. Let's see, let's not maximize it. That sound in the background is the headset changing into view. But you can't see the controllers popping up right now, and this is something I haven't quite figured out. This area down here, if the controllers aren't found when you maybe start the application, we get a bunch of nan rotations, and then basically the controllers kind of don't work. But if you just restart, if you hit play and then hit play again, make sure the controllers are kind of in view of the headset, then you don't get any of these messages. So I'm going to be trying to figure out a solution to this in the future, and hopefully we'll figure that out in a future diary video. But anyways, you can see here, I'm just going to hold the left controller, move the joystick around, and you can see the thumbstick position being updated. So it is getting the valid inputs. It's just not displaying the controllers right now, but we are getting the valid inputs. So let's go ahead and look at that script just a little more closely, and I'll post this class as well. Basically, we have a, like I said, a public left and right controller state. And again, in the awake, we subscribe to all these different events. And what I've done is just change these events slightly to not have a dictionary, but instead to update the state into my left and right controller states. So let's go into this detected, lost, and updated methods. So when a source is detected, I basically just checked the, well, first we make sure it's a controller, and then we create a new state out of that. This is right out of their code. I'll just compare this side by side with their code so you can see the differences. Let me get a little more screen real estate here. So here's their source detected. They see is it controller, and then they add a new controller state based on the handedness. So I pulled this out, this new controller state, into a separate variable. So we have state controller state, new controller state based on the handedness. And then I have this little helper method that just sets this into either my left or right controller state based on the handedness. So if this handedness is left, it just says, we can just go look at it real quick. It's pretty simple. It just says left equals the state or right equals the state. So that's just assigning the controller state into that left or right variable. And then likewise on the loss, I just set that variable to null based on the handedness. So if we lost the left hand, I just set our controller state to null. So that's basically it. The other thing I did is inside this update method, I say, okay, which controller state do we have based on the handedness? Is it the left state or the right state? And then update all the information. And then one thing to think about here is that this updated method is out of sync from like the Unity update or fixed update methods. Because I was trying to, remember back here when I said we have these up and down events. So let's talk a little bit about how I did that real quick. So initially I was trying to call these from inside an update loop, but like I had guessed, some of them worked and some of them didn't, because I was updating this state like grasped and last grasped inside this update method. I had, inside here controller state got grasped equals something, and then I would say, I think I have a method in here that says record state. So I was calling this record state method, which would basically just store all the states from the current frame and put them into these little temporary variables that can store that state for like the last frame, for example. So then we can, in all these up and down methods, we can compare the current frame to the last frame. But if I was updating this inside this interaction source updated method, but that's out of sync from update. So if you were inside the regular mono behavior update loop trying to call these, sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. So I got around that by recording the state inside the late update loop. So you can see inside my controller manager, I have the Unity late update loop, and that just records the state after the update frame. So to summarize, we have this interaction manager update loop, and that's happening all the time as controllers get updated. This method gets called, and the states for all these values inside the controller state get filled out. Now, in the late update frame, now we're on Unity's thread, I record the state of the controller. That way, from any class inside the regular update loop, we can call methods like any button up, grasp down, grasp up, menu down, menu up, so on and so forth, and it always works all the time. So just to show that in action, I have a little debug press events flag, so you can check that out and just see how it works. Basically, it just has, a bunch of debug statements for select up, select down. So inside my controller manager, inside an update loop, I just say debug the left and right controller. So I'll just show you that really, really quick. All right, so now I want you to look at the debug console. I'm just going to clear it out and turn collapse off. Now on my controller, I'm going to start pressing the left trigger. As you can see, there's a down and up event. So if I hold down, that counter goes up, and if I release now, then it goes up and down, so on. So I can start pressing different buttons on the controller, and you can see all the up and down events getting registered every time. So you can try this out for yourself. Like I said, I will include this mixed reality controller manager script, as well as my custom controller state script inside the comments, so you guys can download them and use it yourself. Whew. All right, so let's go back to our overview real quick. So that really covers the Holo Toolkit and some of these new scripts I've created, controller manager and controller state. Next, I wanted to remove this teleport behavior. Let's go back to the Holo Toolkit scene, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So under Holo Toolkit examples, scenes, motion controller test, this is the scene I originally started with. I'll maximize and run this again just really quickly. All right, so there is some built-in teleport behavior. They have a script where if you push left on the joystick, it kind of rotates your camera around, and I wanted to get rid of that functionality. So if you guys want to do the same, I want to use these joysticks in my game, and I don't want to have it rotate the camera around. So I just want to show you guys where that script is so you can remove that. It took me a while to find it. So that script is under the top object, under the camera parent, and it's this mixed reality teleport script. So if you don't want any of those default functionalities, just turn that off. And now when you hit play, you can move the joystick around as much as you want, and it doesn't teleport you. All right, perfect. So that's pretty quick. That's all I want to talk about there. Yeah, I wanted to go over some quick tips and tricks, and then I think before I do this last part, I'll just show you my game and how I've gotten it working inside the game and how I did that from scripts. So let's say you have your own project, and now you downloaded my custom scripts for the controller manager and the controller state. Let's show you how to use those a little bit better. So let's go into my scenes, Beat Planet Madness. Like I said, the project right now is called Vivo, but we're changing the name to Beat Planet Madness. So I have a spaceship, and on that ship is a ship controller script. And I'll just do a quick search for mixed reality controller. So in this script, I grabbed a little reference to the instance. I made my mixed reality controller a singleton object. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but basically this instance, if you haven't seen it before, it's a public static reference to the singleton controller. I'll talk about more of that later, but anyways, let's look for this controller manager. So inside the update loop, let's start there. So inside my update loop, I'm switching based on the build. I want to build this game for various different platforms, Windows, mobile. I'm working on an arcade cabinet. So here's just a little switch case to toggle what controls we're using based on the current platform we're building for. So let's go into these mixed reality controls. So here I wanted to get the joystick left and right, like basically the position of the joystick. So I added, let's get a little more screen space here. So we have a reference to our controller manager, and here's the left controller and right controller. I wanted the touchpad to work as well as the joystick. So I added this little conditional statement that says, are they touching the touchpad? If they are, use the touchpad's position. So that would be your point on your thumb's position inside the touchpad. Or if they're not touching the touchpad, then we'll use the thumbstick position. So this gets either the touchpad or the joystick position depending on what they're touching. And then I assign that to my heading variables. Now I also have this Boolean, so that'll just get you the raw input. But one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of joysticks, basically for every console, they're not perfect. So sometimes you release the joystick, but it'll still have a value of like 0.1 in there, for example. So you're going to want to create a threshold. I call mine joystick threshold. Mine's currently set at 0.2, and that seems to be working. But basically, only consider it valid input if the joystick X or Y is greater than a certain threshold. And you have to grab the absolute value of that, because someone could be, if someone is pushing left on the joystick, that's a negative. Joystick left.x will be a negative value. If they're pushing right, it's a positive value. So you want to see if any input, the absolute value is greater than the threshold, then it's valid data. So there's how you can get the joystick input. Just call the controller manager .left or right, and you can call thumbstick position on that. And just remember this controller manager, I stored a little local reference to it, but you could also, let me go back to my mixed reality. You could also, instead of storing a local reference from any script, you can say mixed reality controller manager .instance .left .touchpad blah 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 blah. Again, there's the static reference, so you can call this whenever. So I just stored a little local copy of it to make these calls a little faster. That's all. So that's joystick. Let's look at how to use the buttons. So I have a shooter script, and here we are even right now inside the update loop for my shooter script. I have a handle input method that's doing a bunch of different stuff for using those abilities based on the beat and blah blah blah. But here's the input. You can see this compared directly to the mouse buttons. So I have in my code, for example, if get button down fire 2, that's linked to the right mouse click button. Then we're going to call this method open ability wheel. So I wanted to link that to, in the mixed reality controller, the right joystick pulling the trigger. So here's that code right now. I say, is the instance in the scene? I might not have this mixed controller manager in the scene if I'm using like a PC build or an Android build. So first we check if that's null, and then we simply call the instance .right select down, and there you go. That's the same as the button down event. So that's how you call these select down, select up methods. Just check if the instance is null, and then call instance left or right, and you can call any of these methods inside the controller state class. All right, I think that just about covers it. Let's go back to our overview here. So we got through all this. For the final part, I just want to talk about a couple Unity tips and tricks, some for working with inside mixed reality. Inside the mixed reality headsets, there's a desktop app. So once you get your mixed reality headset all set up, and you put your headset on, you'll be inside this virtual room. And inside that virtual room, you can open a start menu and open up a desktop app. And inside your VR headset, you'll have this floating window of your desktop. And that's real nice because you can, work inside Unity, do whatever you want, and then just put your headset on and then use the desktop app to actually start or stop the application from inside VR. That way your head starts at the right position and so on and so forth. Another thing I forgot to mention is once you import this Holo Toolkit, you should also check out this tool menu that has been added, Mixed Reality Toolkit. And this is a good way you can configure either your project settings or your scene settings. See more on the Holo Toolkit page about exactly what they do, but For a lot of the mixed reality stuff, you need to enable project settings like you can see here. It will target UWP. You'll enable mixed reality, and that allows you to, when your headset's plugged in, you'll just hit play and it'll just go right into the application on your headset. You don't have to build. You can that's something I found that's really nice when you're developing. I've had a lot of other headsets where you have to build an executable, open up the solution, or you build a solution, open up the solution, build to the device, and this is a lot faster. If your headset's plugged in, you can just hit play as long as you've set up these settings, and it just goes right to your headset. So that's really awesome. All right, and then finally, I just want to talk about some things one thing that's included with the HoloLens toolkit, and that's the singleton script. I've wrote my own version of this, but theirs is really nice, so I've ended up using theirs. We can just go ahead and look at it real quick. So you'll notice that the Mixed Reality Control Manager implements this singleton. And let's just look for it real quick. So this singleton script is a generic class that just implements the singleton design pattern. So this is really awesome for when you just have one of something inside your game. And in summary, basically, in the awake method, it looks for a singleton. If one already exists in the scene, it deletes that one. And then we always make this object the singleton. And what this singleton object is, it's just a nice way when you only have one of something to reference it from any class. You can notice inside my shooter script, I can just call controller manager.instance. I don't need to create a public mixed reality control manager and then it'll show up in the inspector and then drag and drop it inside the inspector. I don't have to do all that. All I have to do is just have that script somewhere in my scene. Here it is. Then from any other script, I can just call mixed reality control manager.instance, and I'll get everything. I'll get this script. So that's the singleton class, and all you have to do to implement it is just derive from singleton, and it's a generic type, so you just have to pass in the name of the script you're using. And note that this also derives from mono behavior. So if you derive from this, if you inherit from this, you also inherit from mono behavior. All right. Finally, the last part, I just want to go over the Unity script template. I'll just show you what that looks like. If I go and create a new script, I'll just call it test. You'll notice, you can already see it here, that my default new script looks different than yours probably does. And that's because I've gone into the Unity settings and changed the default script template. This is just the way I like to organize it. It makes, if you notice, like every time you open up a new script, like deleting the start and the update methods and adding all your own headers and doing all this stuff, what you can do is go into your program files. Let's see, program files. There you go. I have a few different versions of Unity, so whichever one you're using, just go under C program files or wherever you installed it. Open up Unity, editor, data, resources, script templates. There you go. And you can see there's a bunch of different script templates, but the main one for a new C# class is just this one at the top. So all you have to do is open that up, and yours will probably look different than mine. Just edit and save this text file and bring it back into this folder, and then I think you'll have to restart Unity and Visual Studio as well, but then when you do, every time you create a new script, it'll look however you want by default, so that's just something really handy. If you try and edit this script inside this folder, it requires admin rights and it probably won't let you save it, so just save it somewhere else, like on your desktop or something, and then drag it into this folder, and when you do that, it'll say, oh, are you sure you really want to do that? You need admin rights, and then you can do it. Okay, well, I think that sums it up for day one of mixed reality development. Figuring all this out and um, implementing my own controller took me about, a day's worth of work. So hopefully, if you like this, if you watch this project, you can just grab those scripts that I'm including in the link, and you'll be off. And in some later demos, I want to create my own custom looking controllers. I also want to create my own custom floor, and we will go from there. All right, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and diary, and I'll catch you later. If you haven't, you can check us out on facebook.com/doggydoggames, Twitter /doggydoggames, Instagram. We have a YouTube channel, which is probably where you're watching this. But check us out, like us, tweet us if you have any questions about this tutorial or anything else. Let me know. All right, I'll catch you later.